Hello everyone! I'm filming again today from house sit number 7 in San Andres, Oayapoum, a village just outside of Oaxaca City in Oaxaca State, Mexico. As a reminder, we are at about 10 months in Mexico. By the time this airs, it might be about 11 months. We've driven 7,000 miles through 15 states. So my goal with this video is to be open and honest about our experiences on the road in Mexico, while hopefully providing an alternative to any fear-mongering about Mexico that you may or may not have seen in the media that you watch. This is the second in what is hopefully a very short series called Mexico Mishaps, which is going to cover some of the more interesting bits of our adventure in Mexico. And yes, the topic is about minor theft, but I want to be clear that this is not a video just dumping on Mexico at all, as Evan and I have both experienced much worse theft in both the United States and Canada. So to start, we crossed the border into Mexico on December 5th, 2021. I was very concerned about making sure that all of our ducks were in a row as far as being here legally and having our car here legally. So for the car, I made sure to cancel our U.S. insurance, and I did that the day after we crossed the border. And I started our Mexican car insurance the day before we crossed the border, just to make sure there was a good overlap and no issues with that. This is because, being that our car is registered in Louisiana and we're still technically Louisiana residents as well as Mexico residents, Louisiana requires that cars registered in Mexico maintain a certain level of liability insurance in order to maintain their registration. At the time of crossing the border, in addition to making sure that we had Mexican car insurance as well as roadside assistance, we also had to receive what's called a TIP. It stands for Temporary Import Permit, and it gives us permission as temporary Mexican residents to bring a United States plated car into Mexico. We are technically temporarily importing the car. We received a tip for 180 days, but because we became temporary residents of Mexico during that time, we were able to extend our temporary import permit for 1 year, which is the length of our current Mexican residency. And around the time this video airs, we will be applying to extend our Mexican residency for another 1 to 3 years. We're hoping to get 3 years at that time. And after that process is complete, we will then need to extend our temporary import permit to match our residency. But back to the car insurance. 4 months after crossing the border, we received a letter from Louisiana saying that we did not have insurance on our car, and because our car had been registered in Louisiana for 4 months without what they saw as car insurance, we were then required to pay a large fine if we ever want to renew our driver's licenses in Louisiana. Now, of course, I had ensured that we did not have any gaps in insurance coverage, and we have full coverage insurance here in Mexico. I spent a lot of time trying to call and email or get through to anyone at the state of Louisiana who could help me with this situation. Finally, I think it took about a week before I even got a response. Finally, I got through to someone who could help me, and I sent her our proof of insurance and the dates and proof of the United States insurance being canceled and those dates. And after a lengthy, complicated back and forth where sometimes they just stopped responding and I had to start the conversation over with a different person in Louisiana, explain to them everything me and the other person had talked about, get them up to speed, and then ask them, can you please continue, can you please answer these questions? I haven't gotten an answer for these questions. A really long process. The conclusion is that Louisiana does not recognize the Mexican car insurance company that we chose, so therefore they are still stating that we had our car registered in Louisiana for 4 months without car insurance, and we are currently going to be unable to renew our driver's licenses in Louisiana next year if we don't pay them something around $600. In the meantime, while we're deciding what to do as far as renewing our Louisiana driver's licenses, we have gone ahead and renewed our international driver's licenses, which will get us through to the end of 2023. And we also just last week obtained Mexico driver's licenses, which are good for 2 years. So we don't have to worry about driving as far as here in Mexico. We are completely covered and legally able to drive. Our concern is eventually getting to Japan and getting Japanese driver's licenses. It's a simple process if we have United States driver's licenses. Japan and the United States have a bit of an agreement as far as getting driver's licenses, but Mexico and Japan do not have the same agreement. So it may or may not be a little complicated in the future, but for the time being here in Mexico, we're totally fine. And here's where it gets even more interesting. The week after dealing with Louisiana and trying to figure all this out and get our insurance straightened out, we got our Louisiana license plate stolen. So while we were at our house sit in Guanajuato, we did not drive our car. So at some point during the 10 days that it was parked in a safe part of the city, we love Guanajuato and have no hard feelings towards Guanajuato. At some point while it was parked on the street, our license plate was removed. Now, where things get a little tricky is, so first of all, Louisiana only has one license plate that's required, so we only had a rear license plate. That license plate getting stolen left us with no license plates. Here in Mexico, if you are perceived to have a parking infraction by a police officer or some sort of transit authority officer, they can remove your license plate. That's what they do. They take it down to the either the whichever municipality or government entity they work for. They take your license plate down there and keep it on file until you go there to pay your fine and retrieve your license plate. So the morning we discovered our license plate was gone was the morning that we were supposed to drive from the end of our house sit in Guanajuato 3 states down to our next house sit in Oaxaca. We spent 4 hours that morning trying to file a police report. So the first thing we did was go to the police station to file a report, and they said that we had to go to these various different locations to make sure that we hadn't actually had our license plate taken for a legitimate reason. So we went back and forth to each of these places before we found out that we had to actually have a letter from those places stating that they did not have our license plate on file, that we were not required to pay a fine for a parking infraction, and that would show the police station that we legitimately had our license plate stolen rather than having our license plate taken for a parking infraction. So after going to these various locations and obtaining the letters saying that we did not have to pay a fine for a parking infraction, we took those to the police station, and then they allowed us to file a police report. The interesting thing is that we were told by those police officers that we are legally allowed to drive in Mexico as long as we have all of our, of course, car insurance, our temporary import permit paperwork, and now our paperwork from the police station, our printed police report stating that our license plate was stolen. We are legally allowed to drive in Mexico with no license plates at all. So while that was, for me, a little nerve-wracking, We made it from Guanajuato, 3 states down, to Oaxaca just in time for our next house sit. We had no problems. We arrived on time, and we didn't even have anyone ask about the fact that we had no license plates. We were driving on toll roads, which means that we're constantly going through toll booths, paying pesos here and there. All the toll booths have cameras, and most of them have police or National Guard shortly after the toll booths, just to make sure that nothing goes down at the toll booths, and not a single officer or anybody along the way driving through 3 states asked about the fact that we had no license plates. In fact, while we were leaving Cholula to drive from Cholula to finish our journey to Oaxaca, we came out of our Airbnb and we accidentally turned the wrong way down a one-way street. So 1 block away from our Airbnb in Cholula, a police officer pulled us over to explain to us that we were going the wrong way on a one-way. He did not mention that we had no license plates. And in fact, he just asked us where we were going and if he could help give us directions. So we were actually looking for an Apple store to buy a replacement charger for Evan's laptop, and the friendly police officer gave us directions. So once we arrived at our destination, the next house sit in Oaxaca, which happens to be the same house that we are sitting for a second time right now, my first job was obviously to get us some new license plates. Having just had the lengthy experience dealing with Louisiana, not recognizing our car insurance, and trying to figure out what to do with that whole situation, it actually worked out pretty well. I did a little reading online, and I'd already read previously about the popular expat loophole for getting your car registered and getting your license plates from Clay County, South Dakota. So this particular county in South Dakota does not require that you are a resident of that county. They don't require that you live in South Dakota, and they have no minimum United States car insurance requirements in order to register your car in that county. In fact, when I went to their website, they had a whole page set up specifically for non-residents to register their cars in that county. They had all sorts of very helpful information online, explained the process in great detail, and when I called to clarify a few things and start the process, Clay County picked up on the second ring, and it happened to be the exact person that I needed to talk to. While we were on the phone having a very easy conversation, I explained, all I said was, "Hello, I'm not a resident of Clay County, South Dakota, but it's my understanding that I can register my car in your county and receive license plates." While we were having that conversation, she emailed me the packet of all the information that I would need to print out and send. So it was an incredibly easy process, especially in contrast with my previous experience with Louisiana. The process of registering our car in South Dakota just involved printing out some forms, filling them out, and mailing them from here in Mexico to South Dakota, along with our current Louisiana car title that we had signed over, and they took care of the rest of the process. It was supposed to take, I think they estimate 2 to 3 weeks, and they had completed the paperwork and mailed our new South Dakota title within a week. We have what's called a digital mailbox in New Orleans. It's like a P.O. box, except it's at an actual mail center, and it is a street address, not a P.O. box address. So we're able to use this address for anything, even the situations where they say you can't use a P.O. box for this. So South Dakota mailed our license plates to our digital mailbox in New Orleans. And once anything arrives there, I can request them via their website to either scan and send me a PDF. And most of our mail, we just scan and have it as a PDF, and that's fine. But obviously we need the tangible license plates and our new car title to be sent to us. So they just collect everything that has been received in our mailbox and ship it to us all together in one box to us here in Mexico. The whole process of replacing our stolen license plate cost $192. It costs $37 to send an envelope from Mexico to South Dakota containing the paperwork and our original Louisiana car title. It cost $99 to register the car in South Dakota and receive the South Dakota car title and have them mail it to our Louisiana mailbox. And then it cost $56 to have it mailed from New Orleans to ourselves here in Mexico. The whole process, including all the shipping, took less than 3 weeks, and it was originally estimated that it would take 6 to 8 weeks. So it was actually quite easy. While of course you never want to deal with theft, at least this was a minor thing. We were able to get it all taken care of, and dealing with South Dakota was a breeze. That concludes our second video in what will hopefully be a very short series called Mexico Mishaps. I have one more that I might film in the future covering the complications of getting our debit cards replaced and sent to us down here. But other than that, we have had no other negative experiences. It has been an overwhelmingly positive time here in Mexico, and we're coming up on a year. So thanks for watching. As always, feel free to comment down below on this video what your thoughts are and what sort of topics you'd like us to cover in the future. And we'll see you then.